Good evening. So I was expecting to kind of see us on the screen. So, hello, good evening. Hello, I'm Linda McClune, and I'm a resident of Roseville. On behalf of the League of Women Voters of Roseville, Maplewood, Little Canada, Falcon Heights, and Lauderdale, I would like to welcome all of you tonight, the candidates, those who joined us in Maplewood City Hall tonight, as well as those viewing the forum on cable television CTV 16. The League of Women Voters is a nonpartisan volunteer organization organized at the local, state, and national level to encourage citizens to participate in government. While we as a league do study and take stands on issues, we do not endorse or support political parties or candidates. The views expressed in this forum are those of the candidates, not those of the League of Women Voters, and the sponsorship of this forum is not an endorsement by the League of any candidate. All candidates who filed for City Council in Maplewood were invited to participate, and we are lucky that all four have agreed to participate tonight, so thank you all. We encourage our members as individuals, as we encourage each of you to get involved in your community and the political party of your choice. It's our purpose in sponsoring candidate forums such as this to provide you with an opportunity to hear candidates face-to-face discuss issues that are important to you. There is never enough time to cover all the issues in a limited time in settings such as this. So if your questions are not addressed, and I have a huge pile here, we encourage you to contact the candidates directly. I want to remind the candidates that the forum is being broadcast in its entirety, and it will be aired and rebroadcast in its entirety. And please check the Maplewood, Minnesota City website, and as well as the CTV 16 website for the additional airing times. So the agenda tonight will be as follows. Earlier, we drew numbers for speaking order. Each candidate will be given 2 minutes for an opening statement. The candidates will then be asked to respond to written questions, 2 minutes per response. Our timer will hold up a card indicating when your time for answering is drawing to a close. That's 30 seconds. And then Cecilia, thank you, Cecilia, will hold up a nice stop sign when it's you've run out of time and your 2 minutes are up. If you don't have to fill up your 2 minutes. If you feel like you've answered, that's fine too. So if you see that stop sign, you can finish your sentence, but then we must ask you to stop. I'll enforce this rule to make sure we give the same amount of time to each of the candidates. We'll rotate the response order based on the numbers drawn, and we'll end with the closing statements, and they'll be given in reverse order of the opening statements. Again, 2 minutes for each candidate. I have found that it's nice to flip around order, so every once in a while, we'll just throw a monkey wrench into the works and see how it goes. So tonight, I'd like to introduce you to the candidates for Maplewood City Council. They are, and I guess I should go in the order that everybody's sitting up here, Brian Smith, Tu Zhang, Bob Cardinal, and Deanna Longree. So I'd like to remind you to direct your answers to the questions and not to have personal or hostile attacks. I've only had that once at a forum. I banged my shoe, so no gavel up here. So as you can see, we've got the order of opening statements. So if you guys ready, I think we're ready to begin. So we'll begin with our first opening statement. Brian Smith.
Well, good evening. Thank you, Linda. I want to thank the League of Women Voters for having us here tonight, and thank all of you for joining us here in the council chambers tonight. It's a great opportunity to be here and connect with you a little bit more directly than I get to on a regular basis when I'm out knocking on doors, so it's just a great treat to be here, so thank you. I believe really strongly that Maplewood has begun a great new path with this council, and I want to work very hard, if elected, to help continue that path of sensible government. This means to be collaborative, means to govern with kindness, honesty, but also with vision. I think it's very important that we work together. I've grown up in my career working in larger companies, and I learned very early that not doing these things was not effective. That building teams, setting out a vision, and driving those teams to success was what has been successful for me, and I think in government I can help do that if I'm elected. I also believe strongly there's opportunity for economic development in Maplewood. There is, I believe, we have a great asset in 3M and a great asset in St. John's Hospital. Beyond that, there aren't a lot of full-time jobs with benefits in town. And I think that we could do more to attract businesses here. At the end of the day, they're not necessarily going to call us. We have to reach out to those businesses and make this a great place to do business. And that's something that I'd like to prioritize and spearhead. And finally, when it comes to city council, so much of it is about the basics, the quality of life. It's about cops, it's about firefighters, it's about filling potholes, it's about plowing the streets and doing all of these things with efficiency and excellence through innovation and making sure that these programs have the resources that they need to be successful. So these are really the things that have energized me to run for the council. It's why I'm here tonight. It's why I've been knocking on doors, and really happy to be here, and thank you.
Thank you very much. So opening statement to Jean.
All right.
Oh. You'll get your full 2 minutes, don't worry. Okay.
Okay. Well, first, I would like to say thanks to the League of Women Voters for hosting this forum, civic forum tonight, and thank you for all the guests that have joined us today, and thank you to all the candidates that have taken their time to be with us here today. Greetings, neighbors, both here and at home. My name is Tu Zhang. I live in Maplewood for over 12 years now. And growing up in South Maplewood, I was slated to go to Tarrant High School, Tarrant North folks. And when I graduated, I went out to college at St. Cloud State University. And after graduating, I was fortunate enough to receive a scholarship to go to law school at William Mitchell College of Law. And where I, as a son of illiterate refugees with no formal education, was able to graduate with a Juris Doctorate degree. And I still remember the day my father, with tears running down his face, putting up my law degree plaque in our Maplewood home. And here in Maplewood was where our story was written. And ladies and gentlemen, that is why I am running for Maplewood City Council. My parents wanted to live in a community that they would be proud of, and one that gives all families a chance to work hard and improve the lives of their children. That is why they, like so many in this room, made Maplewood their permanent home. As I talked with the community, with neighbors, with leaders, with small business owners, I learned that Maplewood wants a leader that can validate the sacrifices and hard work of Maplewood families. This election and tonight is not about the Tu Zhang saga, but I believe that I am the leader that you would want to represent our city of Maplewood. I am an advocate of a professional city council, and for my work as an urban planning organizer with a nonprofit organization that serves underserved and underrepresented communities, I'm all about working together and putting nonsense out of the picture. I believe that I can serve you well, and we can move Maplewood forward together. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Opening statement, Bob Cardinal.
Well, thank you, Linda McClune and Cecilia Warner, who are the chairs for the League of Women Voters, and putting on this forum. Really appreciate it. We've had them in the past, and I have always said my mother was Secretary of the State League of Women Voters, so I kind of grew up with that, and a house full of files and before computers a long time ago. So I can appreciate what you do, and this is the only forum that we're going to have, so thank you very much. What I'd like to start with is I've campaigned all over Maplewood, every neighborhood, every street, and I've talked with so many citizens and just talked about issues, talked about taxes, schools, neighbors, deer, rabbits, dogs, cats, police, fire, jobs, economy, talked about everything. And there isn't a corner of Maplewood that I have not addressed. I know Maplewood very well, and I will tell you that Maplewood is a great city, and it's very similar all throughout Maplewood. There's some very nice big yards. There's a lot of moderate, smaller yards, but basically it's all the same. And I will tell you that the citizens of Maplewood are different than any other community. They're very proud. Usually it's somebody that's moved out of St. Paul, and so we're all the same in Maplewood. what we have in this election is a couple of people that have been on the council and a couple of people that are aspiring. I wish everyone well. And there's one thing that you should know about this campaign, and it would be something described as a blind date.
Thank you. Thank you very much. And opening statement, Diana Longley.
Thank you very much, and thank you all around to everybody here. We've heard all the thank yous to everyone here, and quite frankly, this is really the beginning of civic engagement, is coming to an event like this and participating and watching and being, even those at home who are watching on cablecast. This is part of what we are doing this up here for, is for public service. Now, many of you know me as a neighborhood attorney in the Gladstone area. I've been there a while. I've lived in Maplewood since 1983. I moved in, well, I think it was Halloween, and I forgot all about the candy, and so I had to sit in a dark living room hoping nobody would knock on the door of my brand new house. So, being a homeowner here in Maplewood, I've lived in Maplewood longer than I've lived anywhere else in my whole entire life, and I actually do not see that I will ever be moving from Maplewood, because I really, truly am dedicated to Maplewood and the quality of life that we have here. Now, I have a number of different positions that I am very committed to, and one is that we need to permanently protect our parks and our neighborhood preserves and our trails, and that is what's part of our quality of life. We also must do certain steps here at City Hall to help our business environment, and we also must stick to the essentials like police and fire and our ambulance service and our streets for the people, so that, again, it's all about quality of life. And I look forward to your questions, and I do have a website, dianalongry.com. Please look at that anytime you like. I would invite you to do so, and please stay afterwards and speak to me in person.
Thank you very much. So I have the biggest stack of questions on one issue, so we'll use that as first, and we're going to start this question with Tu Chang. So what is, and I'm just going to pick one of them. They're all reasonably similar. What is your position on the light rail running down the Bruce Vento Trail, and do you support this?
Yeah. So for the Rush Line corridor, it's a very important issue, and it affects the local economy and the regional economy. As of now, I am supportive, of the Rush Line corridor, but, right now, talking to folks on that lives near the Bruce Vento Trail, it's not a location where I would be an advocate of. I think there are viable alternatives that we can look at, and, that's something that I am geared to do if elected as your next city council person.
Thank you. Bob Cardinal. What is your position on the light rail running down the Bruce Vento Trail?
I think that there's some commercial corridors. There were three. There was Highway 61, which I live very close to, very, very commercial. And then you have White Bear Avenue. I think it probably should align where there's going to be traffic and not people having to walk to get to it. If you go back to one of my first meetings as mayor many years ago, I'll take credit for naming the Bruce Vento Trail. And I will not tarnish Bruce Vento by giving this light rail. I think we need to stay away from that. Keep that trail, preserve it for what it is, memory of Bruce Vento. So that's what I'd say.
Thank you. Diana Longley, what is your position on the light rail running down the Bruce Vento Trail?
Anyone who has read the recent Maplewood Living magazine that has gone out to everybody's home knows exactly what my position is, and my position is stated in there very clearly, that I believe that the Bruce Vento Trail is the wrong route, that the correct route is Highway 61, because that is a commercial and transit corridor, which makes better sense, because quite frankly, if we are to have the economic development that is being promised to accompany the light rail, We need to have it along a commercial area because you're not going to be doing commercial development in the backyards of people who are backed up to the Bruce Vento Trail. Thank you.
Thank you. And finally, Brian Smith, what is your position on the light rail running through the
Well,
Bruce
I guess
Vento
I'm going to make it a set of four here. I'm 100% in favor of their transit being, the light rail transit through the Rush Line corridor coming through Maplewood, 100% for it. But not a fan of putting it onto the Vento Trail. For some of the same reasons that Diana mentioned, I believe that when we talk about permanent transit, whether that's light rail transit in this case or bus rapid transit, what sets that apart from just putting more buses on the road is its ability to drive development, both residential and commercial development. And that I think there's a lot more opportunity in the other two corridors for that. And I think that it would be, we have to be very cognizant to make sure that we're putting that investment into a place where we're going to get the largest return on that investment. And I think that's either Whitebear Avenue or potentially Highway 61.
Thank you. So with this next session, we'll start with Bob Cardinal. And this is the very first question that was sitting here, so I'm going to ask it. What is your position on code enforcement?
There are codes, and there's been many changes, so I concur with in enforcing the codes. That's something that is on people's minds all throughout Maplewood. When you talk to them, they can see some differences. And if I pinned it down, it'd be cars on grass and not on a hard surface. That might be the big thing. And we had this discussion in the City Council workshop just this Monday about changes in enforcing. So, yeah, I mean, I'm all for that. Yeah.
Thank you. Diana Longley, what is your position on code enforcement?
I believe code enforcement is very important for our quality of life and for the value of our properties and also for everyone's feeling of ownership within the community. Now, I have made a commitment prior to running about my commitment to code enforcement. Previously, when I was on the council, we didn't have a dedicated code enforcement officer, and that was one of the positions that we created to meet that need, was to have a dedicated code enforcement officer, that was their entire job. Now, I know that there's always going to be a strain on our prosecution side if our code enforcement goes all the way to district court, and that's something that the city has to take into account. But I believe that there's a way that the city can set up an administrative type of process under our city ordinances such that we could actually handle those complaints administratively here at City Hall so not to incur other additional expenses with our prosecution contract that we have.
Thank you. Brian Smith?
I'd say of the hundreds of folks I've talked to outdoor knocking, code enforcement is probably one thing that comes up more than just about anything else. And I think we absolutely have to have a strong hand and in code enforcement. However, I think it's very critical that we do code enforcement in a consistent way across the city, that we prioritize those things that need to be prioritized, that code enforcement does not become a way to get rid of people maybe that don't look like you in your neighborhood or a way to make people feel unwelcome. It has to be applied consistently across the city, and it has to be focused on those priorities. I've talked to people in South Maplewood who live in a building where their landlords weren't fixing their bathrooms for weeks on end. To me, that's a very high priority, right? Those sorts of things that cause danger, that cause health problems, that cause daily issues for people need to be dealt with vigor. Those things that are indicative of crime happening in the neighborhood need to be dealt with vigor. Those things that are maybe a little bit further down the list, we still need to deal with those things. But again, it has to be with fairness and consistency to make sure that we're applying it equally across the city.
Thank you. And Tu Zhang?
Yeah, so for code enforcement, do I support it? Yes. Why do I support it? You know, there are many issues, there are many reasons why I support it. And, you know, with what Brian just said, you know, consistency is a key ingredient in, you know, proper enforcement and getting the folks to really feel that it's really impacting or really making a difference. And if we look at our city of Maplewood, you know, that we have a large aging population. There are many seniors, many retiring folks that have lots of value in their home, and they don't want their neighbor down the road who's not following the same rules as they are. And, you know, we want to, you know, support code enforcement. We want to be consistent. And how do we do that? You know, we make sure that there are the resources that are available for, you know, our code enforcement officers to do their job properly and be able to do it on a consistent basis.
Thank you very much. So this next question will start with Diana Longree, and there's 4 questions, and they ask the same question in sort of the same way, and I'm just going to pick one rather than ask it yes or no. So the question basically of all of these people is, how long have you lived in Maplewood, and where are you employed?
Oh, well, that's very easy. I moved here to Maplewood in 1983 when I bought my first house. I'm now in my second house in Maplewood, which happens to be right next door to the first house I bought. And so I've owned 2 different homes in Maplewood. I've raised 2 adult boys, and I am an attorney. I have my practice in the Gladstone area, not too far from here, and so I'm self-employed. So that means I have to be able to tell myself to get up and go every single day, and I think I do a pretty good job of it because I'm still self-employed. So thank you.
Thank you. So, Brian Smith, how long have you lived in Maplewood, and where are you employed?
All right. My wife and my son and I have lived here in Maplewood for about 5 years over on Lake Phelan, and just love it. It's a beautiful spot, and we feel very lucky to be there. I work for Tennant Company in Golden Valley. We manufacture floor cleaning equipment. It's great to work for a company that still manufactures here in the United States, and on days when I'm feeling down, being able to go walk out on the floor and watch those folks building machines, many of whom used to work at the Ford plant or other manufacturers in town, just it makes me feel great and makes me want to go back to work every day. I'm a marketing guy, work really closely with our sales force to help them be successful by getting our message out and helping our customers understand the value that we can bring them. I have my master's degree in business from the Carlson School at the university, and my undergrad is in political science from the university.
Thank you. Tu Zhang, how long have you lived in Maplewood, and where are you employed?
Yeah, so next month it'll be 13 years since my family moved to Maplewood in 2002. And, you know, it was 1 month before my grandfather passed away, and I was very happy that he got to see my dad move into a house in a nice neighborhood. And, you know, we've lived there for 12 years now, 12 going on 13. And, you know, right now I work for a nonprofit organization called Harrison Neighborhood Association. And what I do is provide community services, try to help, you know, local community members, you know, start their own businesses, lobby City Hall in the city of Minneapolis, and that's what I do right now.
Thank you. And finally, Bob Cardinal, how long have you lived in Maplewood, and where are you employed?
Okay, I'm going to give you a rundown here in a minute and a half. So I was born on Arcade Street, about 2 blocks from Waldo Lubin, who was the first mayor of Maplewood, and that was 1952. Went to Edgerton School, went to Capitol View. Those are Roseville schools, the Roseville School District. I see some District 623 people here. And the dividing line is Arcade Street. If I had lived across the street, I would have gone to North St. Paul. If I lived down half a mile, I would have gone to Johnson. If I lived up 2 miles north, I would have gone to White Bear. But fortunately, I was in the school district of 623 Roseville. I went to Frank B. Kellogg High School. I played a lot of sports, Went to Lakewood Junior College. I was going to be a pro hockey player. Dave Brooks was my coach. That's Herb Brooks' brother. So I thought I had a path. Found out that that wasn't to be. I went in the Marine Corps. I came out a captain, 3 years, active duty. Finished up my BA at University of St. Thomas. Did graduate work at the U of M. Worked for a big insurance company, Prudential, for a while. And I've been a business broker for almost 25 years. I sell businesses pretty much Minnesota, Wisconsin, Iowa, and let's see what else. So I've been here pretty much all my life except for a couple of years when my wife was from St. Paul, and we moved in St. Paul, at our first house in St. Paul down by Gustavus Adolphus Church.
Thank you. So I think now we'll switch directions, and we're going to start with Bob Cardinal, but we're going to go the other way. Okay. And this is a really good question, and I can't wait to hear the answer. So we'll start again with Bob Cardinal. Should the community center be upgraded or sold or run by a private company? So in other words, what are we going to do with our community center?
Okay, first off, the community center is in a partnership right now with the YMCA. Basically, the YMCA White Bear is helping us out on the pool area. It's been a drain on the city for a long time. It was built with tax increment financing. There was not any maintenance plan 20 years ago when it was put up. No, I think it's, we're spending a lot of money there. But it's for all the citizens, and you could think of it as a park. Just what does a park cost? And, it's there for everybody. My family's a member. I don't go much, but my kids go a lot. So as far as what we should do with it, I think we're moving in the right direction, trying to shore up the costs a little bit, get more activity there. It's a great resource. Many years ago, 3M did all their Six Sigma training at the Maplewood Community Center for 3 years when they had a CEO that required that. So, we're working on it. It's not something that we're avoiding, and I don't think we should sell it. So,
Thank you. So now to Zhang. Should the community center be upgraded or sold or run by a private company?
Yeah, so, my position on the community center is that, it should be upgraded. It's something that we should embrace as a city and be proud of. And, my view on this, ever since we moved here is that, Maplewood, we don't necessarily have a downtown area per se, but, Maplewood is our gathering place. The Maplewood Community Center is where I could see people not from my age group, see people not from, my background, and we can share a common identity and say, Maplewood Community Center, it is ours, and, we want other cities to be envious of us and, want to come here, be members here. And, I'm a member there, my dad is. Try to get my mom to go, but she, never goes. But that's a whole different story.
Thank you. Brian Smith, should the community center be upgraded or sold or run by a private company?
I agree with you on this. I think it's a great asset for the city, and I would not want to see it sold. And it needs to be upgraded. Some basic things like the roof needs to be fixed, and there's those kinds of pieces. Plus, how do we make it even more relevant for people today? I think there are some opportunities for us to get creative, though. I think one of the things I hear a lot from folks around town is, hey, at Maplewood, the community center is kind of expensive. And, compared to joining a private health club, it's not very expensive. But if you're just looking to write a check, it's an expensive endeavor. So I think, looking at some opportunities, we now have, this council has made it possible for us to start looking at creating philanthropies around some of our city services, looking at, could we start a community center foundation that could help lower income families be able to afford to be members? Could we figure out perhaps a way to take those programs and engage South Maplewood more effectively than we do today? Because let's face it, it's a hike. to drive up there from South Maplewood? How could we bring some of those services and assets to those folks? So I think there's some opportunities for us to get creative within that, and perhaps bringing together some sort of philanthropic entity, or looking for some maybe public-private partnerships and some of those sorts of approaches. But at the end of the day, it's a city asset, and I think we have to protect it.
Thank you. Diana Longree.
Thank you very much for this question. First of all, I will tell you that I am a member of the community center, and I believe that my husband has been a member since pretty close to the time that it was opened up. Now, with that said, to answer this question, I think that it's important to realize that the community center is not just something that's operated out of the operational budget. It's actually something that's called an enterprise fund, which is based on state statute that says how we are supposed to try to operate the community center, which is that at least to try to break even though we try that year after year, we never quite get there. Now, I do not believe that the community center is a park, because you see, parks are free for all to use, no matter what their income is and no matter what their circumstances are. And in order to have the community center be a gathering place and a meeting place for all of our community to come there, you need to pay to play. Now, what are we going to do with the community center? Well, we have indeed tried to now enter into this partnership with the YMCA, and the jury's still out on that, whether or not if that is going to pan out or not. I'm hopeful that it will, but there's a lot of unanswered questions about the finances and how those numbers work out. I also want to mention is that from the last time I knew, about 50% of the membership of the community center are actually folks from outside of Maplewood, which is wonderful, because that means that we are serving the needs of people in other communities. So maybe we could start some kind of a joint powers agreement with our neighboring communities whose citizens are using our community center, and use that as a way to lower the prices, the membership prices, so that everybody who wants to go to the community center is able to do so.
Thank
And I
you.
think-
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Our next question, we're going to start with Tu Zhang. So, and there's several questions, and I'm just going to pick one of the ones that's easier to read. And that is, how can we make Maplewood more affordable for homeowners? In other words, how can we make sure we have houses at prices that people can afford?
Yeah, so this one, it's a issue, with the changing demographics of our city. We have, St. Paul is expanding, our own city is expanding. One thing that the city of Maplewood, and as a city council member I could do, is, work with, the county level, work with the state level, and see if we can find certain programs that we could work together to help, create here in the city of Maplewood, because it's not an issue that the city of Maplewood can solve by itself. It's not solely a city of Maplewood issue. It goes to the larger issue that impacts our entire region, because other cities similar to Maplewood are facing it too. So I think we should partner with other communities and other government systems and work together to solve this issue.
Thank you. And so now we're going to go to Brian Smith.
Thank you. I think when we look at housing in our city, we have to make sure that we have the right mix. We are, like it or not, we are an inner-ring suburb, which means that we're close to the city centers, which means we need to have a range of housing options, ranges of densities, ranges of affordability, to make sure that we can serve folks who are interested in living a little closer to work and having a little bit more of an urban lifestyle within a suburban environment. My personal feeling, I think we have a lot of great options, but I think for some of the millennials coming along, I'm not sure that we have the right set of things that are attractive to millennials coming up at the right price points, or with the right styles and amenities available. And heck, with 3M right here, seems like we're missing an opportunity to attract a lot of the same kinds of employees that they're attracting to come and work there. They're spending hundreds of millions of dollars on their new building, largely because their old labs looked like high school labs, and they wanted to have new labs to attract these millennial chemists and other engineers to come and work here. And it sure would be great if we could get them, when they do come to work here, to live in Maplewood. At the end of the day, too, I think it's important that we really remain flexible and understanding about the different roles that housing and kinds of housing can play in our neighborhoods. I think sometimes it's hard for people to think about neighborhoods changing, and I think it's important that we keep open dialogue as those neighborhoods develop and change with the different kinds of housing that might be there, to know that it may not be a bad thing at all.
Thank you. Diana Longree, Affordable Housing.
Yes, thank you very much. One thing that Maplewood has done a very good job of is having affordable housing at all different types of housing varieties, whether or not if it's apartment or single-family homes or townhomes. And what bears this out is that even back in 2003, when our city manager back then was assistant city manager, she said to the council that she had done a study of all the affordable housing in Maplewood, and it was surprising that even those new permits that were being pulled, they were for housing, a single-family housing and townhomes that fell within the guidelines for affordable housing. And just recently, only months ago, now as city manager, she was telling the council the same thing. So you see, we have done a good job in that regard. But the question I understand it to be is, how can we keep that housing affordable once the individuals are in their home? Because it might be affordable to buy it initially, but in order to stay in that home, that's also the second piece of affordability. And that's where the council needs to balance between the amount that they levy for their property taxes, what types of fees that they add on for other types of fees that they're looking at, whether or not it's the environmental utility tax, whether it's the new natural gas franchise fee. All of these fees, they all add up. And suddenly, maybe your house was affordable, but living in that house may not remain affordable. And so that's really the challenge that Maplewood has. Thank you.
Thank you. And finally, Bob Cardinal, Affordable Housing.
Okay, Maplewood. Throughout Maplewood, you have all kinds of different housing. The affordable housing has been addressed ever since I can remember. There's always been changes in building and adjustments to keep in the forefront of affordable housing. I don't think there's any community in Ramsey County that has done as good a job as Maplewood for affordable housing. There's all kinds of different housing options for people that want to live in Maplewood. Supposedly there's a real want for apartments, and City Council has taken a direction to add that. There really isn't any land left, maybe a couple of few acres where housing could be added. And the developers always want to be in a bus line, a corridor where there's transportation, so that people can have housing and then get to work instead of walking a mile or whatever to a bus line. So there's very little bit of property left. Affordable housing, I feel very, very good about how Maplewood has addressed it in the last 20 years.
Thank you. So this next question, we will start with Brian Smith. And there are several questions that are on the same theme, so I'm just going to pick one of those. Maplewood has an increasingly diverse population. What do you think the council can do to meet the needs of these different demographic groups, encourage their involvement, and how will you measure that you've been successful? So that's a three-part question.
So what can we do?
What can you do? How do you meet the needs? How do you encourage involvement of the broad demographics in, presumably in city government? And how will you measure your success?
Ooh, 2 minutes. Okay. I think when I started talking a little bit earlier about code enforcement and consistency, I think one of the most important things the city can do is to provide folks from diverse populations or different backgrounds a positive experience whenever they touch the city, whether it's with city employees here in City Hall, whether it's with police officers out on the street or firefighters or EMTs. I think there has to be absolutely no tolerance for people feeling at all underserved by the city. I think the police department has a particularly special role in this, and it's really more about people feeling protected by the police, not enforced by the police. It's the role that the police play before there's a problem, in building relationships, in building bridges, in making people feel comfortable approaching a Maplewood cop and talking about what's going on in their neighborhood. And I think Chief Schnell is doing a fantastic job of this, and I think that every interaction I've had with the police force, they've been professional and solid, and I think that they can be the leaders for us, really, in outreach. As far as involvement, I think there's a lot of opportunity, whether it's the commissions here at City Hall or other volunteer opportunities here or working in our schools. All of these kinds of things are opportunities. And at the end of the day, one of us just needs to get asked to do it. I think all of us sitting here probably at one point were asked if we might serve. And that's where it starts. So how do we start to reach out to these communities and ask? And it's one of the reasons I'm so excited about running is I want to be out in these communities and I want to do the asking.
Thank you. Diana Longery, do you need me to repeat the question?
No, I've got
Okay,
it. Thank you.
Okay.
This is a great question because it really goes to the heart of community engagement, which is one of the favorite things on my to-do list. Always, always, always. Now, in my law practice, I have quite a diverse clientele. And I even have clients from the Somali community that come all the way from Minneapolis to Maplewood to come to my law office. And why is that? It's because I listen to what they have to say. I think about the cultural differences of what they're expressing and how that we are going to incorporate that with understanding what the laws are, and there may be conflict between some of their cultural norms and what our law is, but working through that so that they understand what what is being expected of them when it comes to the law. I do think it's important in our community that we have diversity training, and not just diversity training as it deals with different ethnic communities, but also in how to especially work with people who have mental health illness. Because I think our police officers, they are faced with so many different types of people every single day that diversity training, including training in working and dealing with people with mental health illnesses, is very important. And I think also in order to build bridges with those in our community of different ethnic backgrounds, that we need to focus on building long-term relationships, because what I learned from my time in China is that if you want to have a friendship with somebody of another nationality, it begins with a commitment for a long-term relationship.
Thank you. Bob Cardinal.
I would say, visiting every neighborhood in Maplewood and homes, that I did not encounter any instance where there was a question of diversity or a concern.
Okay. Technical difficulties. Okay. Bob, we'll start him from the beginning. So
So I would I would say that there's confidence in the community with the police and the fire. And there's comfort. And we don't have a troubling community. We have a very strong, respectful community. I didn't encounter any instances. So that tells me what I would, if I had to tell Chief Schnell or Chief Lucan, if there were any issues, there aren't any. I'm fortunate to have some kids that go to North High School, and North and Tartan are in their school districts, and Roseville. North is pretty much 50-50 as far as diversity from different nationalities and races and cultures. It's 50-50 right now. I imagine Tartan is probably similar to that. And I think part of that is there's, with open enrollment, people are coming from St. Paul to go to our high schools. And in Roseville, that's a big number that come from St. Paul. So as far as diversity in the community, as far as diversity in the high schools, it's working. I would say, as far as our commissions go, we ask for volunteers to fill out applications to apply for commissions, and we've got all kinds of applicants that would be considered immigrants or minority. And fortunately, we're able to put those people on the commission. So that's a change that I've seen recently that is very welcoming to Maplewood. So no one should be shut out from wanting to volunteer for any commissions or any committees. So very good.
Thank you. So, Tu Zhang, how will you meet the needs of different demographics in Maplewood, encourage their involvement, and how will you measure their success?
Yeah, so, what can we do to reach out to the, our diverse community here in Maplewood? And I think the key thing is, let the city be the one to initiate the contact, and when they do respond, be welcoming and, let them know that, we value their input, not just their input for the sake of having a diverse person in, but, including them in the process of how we come to a decision, and, let them feel that, hey, we value what you're doing makes a difference. And, I think that's how we're going to be able to meet their needs, because they want to feel included and to feel that, they are part of the community. And, we walk around Maplewood, door knocking. We have lots of new first-time voters that said, I've never seen, anybody come and door knock at our home, or anybody asking us, what our opinion was. They don't even know what ethnicity I am. They call me this race just because of who I look, and, group me under a huge category. So I think there are lots of, sensitivities that people have towards, the whole diversity issue. But I think we just be opening and welcoming, and, be the one to initiate the contact. And I am very excited at the prospect of being a city council member that can reach out and has an experience of reaching out. And I think the city of Maplewood is, heading in the right direction, and we could do, be much more inclusive in the long run. Yeah.
Thank you. So the next question, I'm going to go in alphabetical order by your first names. What the heck? So that makes the names that are up there. So we'll start with Bob Cardinal. Okay. So this is an interesting question. And remember, we don't take hostile or attacking comments as part of our forums. So what do you see as the strengths and weaknesses of the current city government? And presumably embedded in that question is, what will you do differently?
Probably the biggest strength is it's a governing council. It's not a protest council. The council functions very well. Right now, there's some balance, and I think that's the key ingredient. What we do best, it's a makeup of 3 females, 2 males, which is good, having people that have been around a long time, and then we have 2 new people, a mayor and a council person that are in their second year. We have some history. We have a city manager that's very familiar with the city, the most qualified candidate for that job, and had gone away, just like I had gone away for a few years, and somehow appeared and came back and was hired. And we're fortunate to have that, where you don't have to go through the growing pains of a new city manager. Strengths, work together, addressing. I don't think that there's anybody bashful on a council. It's a pretty respectful council. We might not have all the same views. We don't have all the same ages. We don't have all the same family backgrounds or where we grew up. But it's an intelligent group, and I look forward to continuing and having that balance.
Thank you. Brian Smith.
Thank you. I think what I'd really commend this council on is their very sensible business-like approach. I think they take a reasonable approach to things. I think there's a calm and a professionalism about this this council that I find to be really effective. I think the other thing that I've seen in talking with folks on the council, I think the council has really turned the corner in becoming much more strategic in their thinking, much more long-term, looking at how do we create longer-term strategic plans, a long-term asset plan, so that things like what's been happening with the community center don't happen in the future, that we have a plan to maintain that building or whatever building we build or whatever street we pave from now into perpetuity. So I think that strategic planning is really revolutionary for the city. It's probably not super exciting and something that, you know, everybody's whipping through the paper getting excited to read the strategic plan, but it is vitally important. And it's important in a business, and it's important in a government. And so I think that's great. I'd say what I would like to bring to the table and bring up the game if I'm elected, I think the council needs to do a better job. And I know they've talked about this, but I think they need to do a much better job of reaching out to investors in the business community to attract businesses to Maplewood. I think, you know, in some ways, we just need to be more aggressive on that front. And I think at the end of the day, we compete with our fellow cities in the Twin Cities for these businesses, and we need to make sure that Maplewood's at the top of that list. And we don't get at that top of the list just because we're great, even though we are. We have to make sure everybody knows it and understands why Maplewood's a great place to do business. So from my perspective, I think just marketing ourselves is a big opportunity.
Thank you. Dana Longree.
Okay. A couple of the strengths that I see, and I see this as a result of watching all the council meetings. I would say that there is a general agreement in how to budget the money every year and how to spend that money. There doesn't seem to be a lot of discussion with regard to that they're all pretty much on the same page. I also think it's a strength that they have continued the discussion of talking about the need for planning for capital improvements for our city. This was discussions that were started back in 2007, and so I think that is a very good strength, that they haven't dropped the ball in talking about what we need to do to maintain our buildings that we have on our campus. With regard to weaknesses, I believe that the council could have a greater commitment to transparency. I know they talk about transparency, but I can think of many instances where it's not as transparent as it could be. I think that we could have more citizen involvement at the city council meetings. I've had a couple of times where I signed up myself personally to talk about a topic, and while it was available to sign up, I was not, either the meeting went so fast they didn't realize there was somebody who wanted to speak. I don't know. I can't say. But the other thing is that I think the council could ask more in-depth questions when they're doing an analysis of things that require a cost-benefit analysis. At least from the citizens' point of view, we don't see that discussion. Thank you.
Thank you. And finally, to Jean.
Yeah, so, one of the greatest strengths I think that the current city council has is being able to adjust and respond to concerns. And, there hasn't been one moment where myself or a member of my family or people in the community that I know that approach the city council and been turned away or, treated disrespectfully. They've been, responsive and, able to adjust to issues that they somehow found out that wasn't the original issue that, the citizen or the family was concerned about. So I would like to commend that and commend the leadership of the mayor and for, leading the council to be a very responsive body. And one thing, I think that could be improved is, the reaching out to the community, more civic engagement, being the one to initiate the contact for that response. And, that is what, my position is, and I still look forward to working with them.
Thank you. So I like to just mix things up a little bit, and I like to ask something super positive. And this is my favorite question to ask, so this is my own question. And I'm going to go in backwards order of your spellings of your last name, which starts us with Tu Zhang. What is your favorite thing about Maplewood?
Yeah, and my favorite thing about Maplewood is the trees. And I told this to Brian, I told this to the mayor, and I think trees, it represents the welcoming nature of a community. When you think of a nice neighborhood, you think of trees. And I have 4 younger brothers. We try to build tree houses, but we suck at it. But trees are something that I think makes Maplewood that much more welcoming.
Thank you.
Yep.
And that's Brian Smith. And what is your favorite thing about Maplewood?
I have to say the people. I have knocked on a lot of doors and talked to a lot of folks over the last months campaigning. And with only a couple of exceptions, it's been incredibly positive, insightful conversations and a lot of laughs and a lot of connection. And I think that when I'm getting frustrated or feeling overworked with the campaign, my wife will always say to me, Brian, you need to go out and door knock. You need to go talk to people because that's what makes you happy. And she's right. And it's I come back from door knocking talking like a crazy person because it's so energizing me to get out and learn about people and learn about their successes and their struggles and. So those are really the things to me that have energized me about Maplewood. And it frankly all started with my neighbors, 2 of whom are here tonight, who, we've built this community on our little street that is so special. And one of the things I don't like about the wintertime is we don't see each other much. And, just from that little bit of connection that has grown for me as a candidate throughout the whole city, of getting to know my neighbors that across Maplewood has been just such a treat to me personally, and something that even if I'm not successful in the election, will be a gift that's been given to me this summer.
Thank you. Diana Longley, what is your favorite thing about Maplewood?
Oh, absolutely the people. Absolutely. Anyone who knows me knows that I'm very much a people person, that I enjoy engaging with other people, to hear what they have to say, to find out what their viewpoint is, to understand their perspective, and to share whatever information it is that we're talking about. Because after all, that's what makes us community members of Maplewood, that we are here together trying to figure out how to make the best life we can in the same community. And it's really a lot of fun. And I really enjoyed it previously when I was on the council, when we'd have intermissions. I noticed that there's a few folks here that maybe were at some of those council meetings, and they know that in the intermissions, I would actually go out and go and shake people's hands and talk to them and ask them what agenda items they were here for, because it's about that personal contact, about being with the people in your community. And so, yes, I agree. It's the people of Maplewood. That's what I like the best.
Thank you. And Bob Cardinal, what is your favorite thing about Maplewood?
I could just say Birchtrup Farm, but I'll say something beyond that. Crossing streets and crossing neighborhoods throughout Maplewood, the housing is so different in so many different neighborhoods that you can have million-dollar houses and you can have apartments that are sufficient to house people. We have a residence just on the other side of County Road C here for large families with, I think, 4 kids or more. That was built back 10 years ago. But the housing throughout Maplewood, I think, is special because, you know, as us, as candidates, we get out and talk to people, and there's so many different types of housing, so many different yard sizes, so many different situations that people are living in, and you can't really, you know, after you do it, you get out there and you look at every neighborhood and, you know, you end up where you are, you know, where you're living. And most of us end up where we're living because of the circumstances, and we're kind of forced into get some housing. I'll tell you a little story about how I ended up where I live. I was on the Planning Commission. This was back in 91, I think 91 or 92. And we had a developer that was developing outdoor movie sites. And so they came to Maplewood, Maple Leaf, and he developed that. There were 50 houses built there. I was serving on the Planning Commission, and I was part of the Planning Commission that planned that plot. And several years later, I ended up living there. And so, it's, you know, everybody likes their neighborhood, and there's improvements that can be made, but the diversity of housing in Maplewood is nothing like any other community around here. Woodbury's kind of a lot of the same. Oakdale's kind of like a lot of the same. St. Paul is, you know, big, and Roseville is kind of the same. But Maplewood has all kinds, and anybody can find housing here that can suit them. So,
Thank
and
you
the
very
Birchtrup
much.
Farm is,
Thank you.
that's a good spot too.
Thank you. So now we're going to start this next question with Dinah Longree, and this is about business. So how do you both attract and retain businesses here in Maplewood?
This is a very good question because it is something that the council has to address. I was recently, well, just this morning, at a meeting that was being held for businesses in Maplewood. It was the first annual engagement for businesses, and they talked about the idea of going out to actually visit each of the 750 businesses that we have here in Maplewood. Well, I think that is a great idea, but I will tell you that this is something that not the first time it's been talked about. And while I think it's a great idea, now we need to do the follow-through on it. So I know that our Housing and Economic Development Commission, that a few years ago, they started that initiative and something happened. But you know what? We're on the path to looking at the right plan. And so with retention, that's one of the best ways, is actually meet one-on-one with your business owners in your community and find out what it is that they have on their mind. Another thing that we can do if we want to be attracting businesses to Maplewood, actually a couple ideas I have. One is that you want to focus your efforts along transportation corridors because most businesses need to rely upon access in and out of their business so that they can get their goods and services to wherever they need to get them. So that's where we should be focusing. We should make sure that we have the proper zoning along our transportation corridors. And I also have this idea that about how Maplewood can get involved in a federal program that's called Tech Hire, which would be a way for Maplewood to actually generate the workforce that's needed in the IT area, combine that with our partnerships that we have with 3M and with the hospital, and we could then maybe perhaps become an IT hub. I'll tell you more
thank
about
you.
it afterwards.
Thank you. Bob Cardinal, how can Maplewood better attract and retain businesses?
First off, we kind of know that the economy really stinks right now. And for a business to survive, that's what they're doing. I happen to use a website that shows jobs in Maplewood, and I'm going to just read some jobs that appear as Maplewood jobs. Regions Hospital, Second Harvest Heartland, Regions Hospital, Ecumen, Agrapru, which is the old Schroeder Milk on Rice Street, 3M, TCF, National Bank, Health East Care System, Agrapru, 3M, Health East. So, 3M's huge here, and they hire. And St. John's is one of the biggest employers in the East Metro. To retain those people, they're just looking to continue to locate new businesses. The council has helped to do that with some property changes. It's a tough time right now, I'd say. So if a business can survive, that's what's happening. Of course, we want to reach out to them. We know that if a business is visited by politicians, they look favorably on that, so we have to try and do that. So that's what I'd say about that.
Thank you. So, Tu Zhang, how would you attract and retain businesses in Maplewood?
Yeah, so, attracting businesses, I think it comes down to how welcoming we can make Maplewood for everyone. We're open for their business, no matter how they look like, where they come from, what their background is. If they're going to open a business, welcome to Maplewood. And, I think that's a mentality that we should have in city council and in how we make our decisions and, forming our city. And, I think, coming from with a family, my three sisters are all here. They're all small business owners. And, they shared with me, what their preferences are, what challenges they face, what issues they run into. And, it is something that, we as a city should be looking into how welcoming we will be, how well we can make them feel comfortable to stay here, to invest here, and to continue doing business within our city.
Thank you. Brian Smith, attract and retain businesses.
So I think the city has three key roles that we need to play. One, to be a champion, to be a facilitator, and to be a partner. When I talk about champion, that's sort of what I've been talking about already tonight, is how do we help businesses understand why this city is a great place to do business? We have a government that's reasonable, that's helpful, that's predictable. A business wants a government that's predictable. They want to be able to walk in and know what's going to happen. They don't want to bring a business partner in and have the city council do a 180 on them. So predictability and reasonability is really important. They also want to know that there's great talent in town. That's highly related to how we support education as a community and make sure that we have good, well-educated folks ready to take those jobs. And third, they want to have customers. And that's highly related to housing and transportation. So those kinds of things are the things we need to push from a champion perspective. A facilitator, and I think this is somewhere where I have a lot of passion, is how do we bring people together? How do we bring that builder, that financer, and maybe a landowner together as a city to be the glue that holds that together to create a new enterprise? The city has a really cool opportunity to be able to do that, of being that sort of facilitator of, hey, we need to have this sort of business here. Let's find those different entities that need to come together to make that happen. And then finally, to be a partner, and I think Diana covered some of this, but talk a little, we need to be able to do the right planning and zoning to make these things happen. We need to build the right transportation infrastructure to support these businesses. And then at the very bottom of the list on my book, it's how do we become financial partners, whether that's through, some sort of tax programming or things like that. But at the end of the day, and I think if you talk to most business people, TIF financing and things like that are at the bottom of their list. They're just looking for a partner and someone who can help them to be successful. So those are the three things I think we need to do.
Thank you. So with this question, we're going to start with Brian and go the other way.
All right.
And there's a couple of questions, and they're all worded in a kind of different way, but I'm going to see if I can turn it into a broader question. So how important is it for citizens to be able to directly address the city council during city council meetings, and what should that look like? How much time, that sort of thing? It's kind of a complicated question.
Yeah, so I think it's vitally important for citizens to be able to address the city council, and I would love to see more and a wider range of citizens come to address the city council. I do think, though, that it's important that we have business-like meetings that are held with decorum and respect, and that have people coming in to present topically on what's in front of the council, and to follow the rules of the meetings. I think these are important pieces of when you come to the council. It's not a free-for-all. It's not an opportunity to vent. It's not an opportunity to be unkind to people. It's an opportunity to help the city do their business. And so I think as long as people are willing to adhere to that, I think I'd love to see more people come and talk to the council, and I think the council would too. I think a lot of times in cities, the councils, any city, not just Maplewood, the councils hear from the loudest people, and the loudest people tend to be the people that come all the time. And I would love to see more people have the courage to come to the council, or, call them at home and call them at the office or send them an email. There's all kinds of different ways to address the council. You don't have to get up and be on television at the meeting. But at the end of the day, accessibility and listening is something I'm passionate about. It's something I've done in my job of getting good ideas from people on the front lines of our business that we can help and integrate into the rest of the business. And I think whether it's citizens, whether it's city employees, whether it's other folks in the community, I think it's vitally important that the council listen, be respectful, and take that seriously.
Thank you. Tu Zhang?
Yeah. So, how important is it for citizens to be able to address the city council? I think it's very important. It goes to the roots of, our democracy, and it allows city council to be able to hear what the concerns of the citizens are. And, how should that go about? My view is that, there should be a proper process put in place, and, process and rules that applies to everyone, not just for some and others, not others. And, I think a key point that, Brian touched on was, accessibility. There are, private citizens, retirees at home that's not going to have the same access as, a well-established business owner, or, someone who works two jobs. They're not going to have the same opportunity, availability to go to City Hall, every day to vent their issue. So I think, there should be a proper channel established for, to allow citizens to voice their opinions, and rules that should apply to everyone. But also City Council should look at being more accessible to the general public.
Thank you. Bob Cardinal.
Freedom of speech. When there's timely concerns and people have something on their mind or on their chest they want to get off, I think it's very appropriate, with parameters and limits as to how long they'd be able to present, and directing it to the city government as proper. I think that could be expanded. I'm all for that. I listen to people. I communicate with people. I do respond to any communications that I get. I reach out. I think that's paramount, to reach out and talk to people, get different views. And so that could be expanded. I think freedom of speech is something that we have, and at the lowest level of government here, and the local level, I think it's very important.
Thank you. And Diane Longley.
This is a great question. It's a great question. I too believe that our council meetings should be businesslike and respectful, because that is the way to conduct yourself in the public's eye, your politicians or your residents who are coming to participate. But I do think that the council members need to be held to the same standards that the residents are held to, so that if you have council members who are mumbling under their breath or making snide comments about either the residents who are speaking or about their fellow council member, that somebody should tell them that it's not within the decorum up there on the wall. I think that that's important. Now, I do think it's important to open up every agenda item to see if there is somebody in the audience who would like to speak on the issue. The reason I say that, oftentimes there's nobody, but let's say that somebody has come to the meeting, they didn't intend to speak on that agenda item, but as a result of hearing the staff report, hearing other information, something comes to their mind where they go, gee, we could contribute to this idea. We have a question. If it's opened up for them to ask their question, give their comment before the vote is taken, now you've got citizen engagement going on with what the council is doing and what their decisions are. I think that public hearings should be allowed to be public hearings, and that you don't have to sign up in advance, that if you're here and you're the public, you get to speak. And I know that when I was on the council, we had some big tough issues, like the Copar development. You know, that public hearing took a long time, but it was a huge issue, and we had many people who wanted to speak. And now today, we have the Fish Creek preserve down south of Carver, and we don't have a bunch of houses there.
Thank you.
That's the result of public hearings.
Thank you. Thank you. So this next question we'll start with Tu Zhang. And this is one of those giant questions. So what do you view as Maplewood's most pressing issue? And if you were king or queen, what would you do to try to solve it?
Yeah, for me, working for Minnesota Legal Aid and their seniors unit, I think seniors issue is one thing that is a pressing issue. It's people's lives. People, our parents, our grandparents. It's their lives at stake. And if I could have the power of a king, as you should say, that is one of the issues that will be my top priority. Yeah.
Thank you. Bob Cardinal, most pressing issue of Maplewood, and how would you solve it?
Communication, and that's community communication. That's the next big thing in Maplewood. If I get reelected, I would push to get better communication. With the makeup of Maplewood, we're here and there and up and down and east and west, and I think that the communication could help where citizens, residents, property owners, people that are living in several families, households, could communicate in a way that would tie the community together. So that was one of the big thing that I was going to say at the end, closing remarks here, so I'll say it right now, though. There are ways that we can communicate. There's communities that have taken that as an initiative, and I would push for that communication, whether it's by telephone, by internet, whatever means, neighborhood groups or whatever, electronic means, and that's what I push for, communication.
Thank you. Diana Longley.
Well, my idea may not be all that novel, but if I had all the power in the world, this is what it would be, is that the council would form a true partnership with all of the residents in Maplewood. Because if the council formed that true partnership with all the residents of Maplewood and listened to and worked with and talked with everybody to come with, but with compromises that meet what our community goals are, many of the problems that we have would suddenly find solutions. The affordability issue, we would find solutions because we tapped into the community and the people of the community who can help the council find the answers. The question of communication, I agree, communication I think could be improved. But there again, it all goes back to, are you going to form that partnership with your residents in your community? Not just some of them, all of them. Even ones that maybe you don't quite understand their perspective, you don't understand what they're getting at. Sometimes a little more patience, you will find that. And so I would say forming a partnership, a true partnership with our community and our residents.
Thank you. And finally, Brian Smith.
I think when I look at this, I think a little bit about Maslow's hierarchy of needs, which talks about, going from your basic needs up to sort of self-actualization and this very spiritual place. And one of the base levels of that is feeling security. And from my perspective and talking to a lot of folks, I think crime is an increasing problem in Maplewood. And I think that the biggest problem with it is people starting to feel less and less secure. Mostly across our city, it's nuisance crimes. It's people breaking into cars and stealing things and that sort of thing. But heck, we've had a pretty tough year when it's come to violent crime in Maplewood. And I'm concerned that may be a trend that we see coming. The good news is we are blessed with an innovator as a police chief, someone who is a leader nationally, and someone who I think can help lead our police force to nip this in the bud and do a fantastic job of working with it. So we're blessed on that front. But as a council person, if I had all the power in the world, I'd make people not commit crimes. That would be great. But dialing that in a little bit, I think making sure that our police force had the resources, the people, and the technology, most importantly, to do their jobs as effectively as possible. Because I think without that sense of security, we're going to have a hard time achieving all the other goals that we want to do.
Thank you. So I have lots of very interesting questions here about public safety and parks and transparency in government, but because we had discussed when we were going to end earlier, we're kind of drawing to a close. I hope that those of you who submitted those questions will make sure that you ask the candidates directly those questions, because there's some really good ones here, and I'm sorry that we didn't get to them. So again, the closing statements will be given in reverse order to the opening statements, which means that we will begin with Diana Longry, and again, you have 2 minutes for your closing statement.
Well, thank you very much for this time. I appreciate you coming out and listening to our answers. Now, I want to make this commitment to you that when elected, I will have a commitment to transparency. And I will also make a commitment to you that I will be that partner that you need up at City Hall. I will be welcoming, and you can come to me and ask me to help you with whatever it is, whether or not if it's understanding how to get documents, understanding why decisions were made, understanding what's going on at meetings, whatever it is, you can come to me. Now, there are 3 areas that I pledge to focus on. One is family affordability. This is very important to the quality of life for all of us here in Maplewood. That we need to focus on essential services such as public safety, our police, our infrastructure, our life-saving medical response services, and we need to slow the rise of property taxes, and we need to spend wisely because that is our duty to all of you. Secondly, our quality of life also is dependent on having the parks and the natural resources that we have in our community, our our neighborhood preserves, and our trails. And I can tell you up front that I will vote no to the sale of any park or neighborhood preserve. And I already told you about how I felt about saving the Bruce Bento Trail. And lastly, I think we need to encourage private economic development here in Maplewood to increase and diversify our commercial and residential tax base. I've talked about some of those initiatives that I would help to initiate with the council, and I think that we need to focus our redevelopment along transportation corridors. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Bob Cardinal, your 2-minute closing statement.
4 years ago, I said at the close of my 2-minute closing, the next big thing in Maplewood was going to be return of the fireworks on the 4th of July if I was elected. And that happened. After 3 years of absence of fireworks, they were returned. Now, that wasn't all Bob Cardinal's doing. That was the city council's wish. And that is made up of the council members, the mayor, city manager, department heads, city employees, and citizens. Just so happens that I identified that as something that needed to be done. I will tell you the next big thing for Maplewood, and that is, if I got reelected, would be community communication. I think there's a lack of communication within the community, even neighborhoods, neighbors. It's not something resolved simply. It's very complex, but I think that'd be an initiative. When you're on the council, you have it's a part-time position. So usually you have some work, you work and you have a career, you have a family, you have a home, you're a part of the community, and overall there has to be a balance, and I've been able to do that, having a full-time job, having a family, having a great wife, having kids in schools, and been able to contribute on the city council. So stability is a big thing. And positive improvement, I think I bring some leadership to the council. I'm usually calm and steady and confident and progress. And I think the staff needs a balance.
Thank you.
I think the city
Thank you.
council leadership is very important to support the staff.
Thank you. And closing statements to Zhang.
Yeah, so thank you again to the League of Women Voters for organizing this forum, and thank you to all the audience and the ones here and at home for your time, and thank you to all the candidates for joining us here today. I would like to close by saying that I'm running for Maplewood City Council because I believe the pursuit of happiness begins right here in local communities like Maplewood. And I'm thankful that my parents made Maplewood our permanent home, and Maplewood has truly been a sanctuary for them as refugees. And, here in the city of Maplewood, we may have an aging population, change in demographics, but I don't think the sun is setting. I think the sun is just beginning to rise. And I think, those that are reaching their retirement age, I think they should be proud of what they built here in Maplewood. And I think they should be excited about what we have here, what we can do, what we can bring to this city. And that's something that I want to bring. And, I believe that I have the energy, the excitement, and the thrill to be able to do that with each and every one of you. And, my parents worked hard to provide an American way of life for me and my siblings here in this city. And my siblings and I have benefited from strong family values. And I want to repay this community by focusing on what matters, Maplewood families. And I could talk to you till I'm blue in the face about all sorts of issues, but if we don't take care of Maplewood families, in the end, none of that matters. And, your vote for me will help validate that, the pursuit of happiness can still happen here in Maplewood. And that, we can support hardworking families, and, be an advocate for strong and inclusive city council, city government. And together, let's make the pursuit of happiness possible right here. And I look for your vote on November 3rd. Thank you.
Thank you. And Brian Smith, your closing statement.
Great, thank you. Thank you so much to the League of Women Voters for having us here tonight. Thank you, Linda, for being a fantastic moderator. Diana and Bob, thank you for your service to the city. Bob, thank you for the fireworks. I just love them this year. And two, thank you for becoming my friend during this campaign. It's been a pleasure getting to know you and your family throughout. I bring a set of strengths and weaknesses. I bring a set of struggles and successes as a candidate for city council. At the end of the day, I think what I'm most proud of and what I feel like I can bring and give to the city is my ability to connect people and collaborate with people. It's what's made me successful in my career. It's what inspires me in my professional and personal life. And it's what I really hope to bring to the table. Because at the end of the day, cities are great when we work together. But that collaboration needs to start at the top. And it needs to start with a sense of respect and kindness and honesty. And I think the fact that I've been able to build a big tent is a testament to that ability. The fact that I've been able to build endorsements from labor and the Chamber of Commerce, from firefighters, from hundreds of residents here in Maplewood, from both parties. I think that that is what makes me excited to do this, is my ability to bring those different kinds of people together and think about how can we make our city great as a team. My wife and I always say, that we're both have pretty strong opinions on things, and that we always say we make better decisions together, whether we're picking paint chips at Home Depot or deciding how to parent our child, that when we work together, we make a better decision when we make it as a team. And that's really the spirit in which I would want to be on the city council. So thank you, and I hope I've earned your vote this November.
Thank you very much. I'd like to remind you that the views expressed by the candidates are those of the candidates and not those of the League of Women Voters, and the sponsorship of this forum is not an endorsement by the League for any candidate. This forum will be re-aired on your cable CTV 16 station, so please check the cable channel schedule for additional times. I'd like to again thank the candidates and the live and TV audience. On behalf of the League of Women Voters, I'd also like to acknowledge and thank these candidates who are serving the community by their willingness to participate in the democratic process and run for office. I would also like to thank them for their participation in the candidate forum, so thank you. Information about these candidates and others running in the general election is available on the League of Women Voters website. In closing, I'd like to remind each of you that the election day is Tuesday, November 3rd. While some people think it's less important to vote when it's only local government on the ballot, actually it's probably even more important because your vote really makes a difference. So we hope that on November 3rd you take a friend and a neighbor and vote. So thank you and good night.